Okay, so welcome everyone to our first In Conversation With. My name's Emma Smith. I'm the project manager with Empowered Conversations, which is a project of 6 Degrees Social Enterprise. We've got Dr. Lydia Morris, who's the researcher at the University of Salford. Dr. Margaret Garner, who is a facilitator with Empowered Conversations. Martin Phillips, who is a carer for his wife Linda and has been on the Empowered Conversations course, and also Dr. Phil McEvoy, who is the Managing Director of 6 Degrees Social Enterprise. So I hope you've all got yourself a cup of tea. That's very important. We're going to give you a little bit of background about what we're going to do today. So I'm going to give a brief update on Empowered Conversations for anybody who hasn't come across it before. I'm going to pass over to Lydia, who's going to share the findings of her 3-year research project. We're then going to have some panel discussions, and all the way through, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's something called Q&A. We've never used this function before, but I'm pretty sure that you can click on that and ask us a question. So towards sort of the middle to end of the session, we'll be looking at those questions, and we'll be trying to get through some of those. So I hope that's okay with everyone. So we've got 46 people on now, which is amazing. Martin, it's a couple more than what you thought we were going to get. So I'll give you a little overview on Empowered Conversations. So it's a communication course for family and professional carers of people with dementia, and it's probably been going for about 6 years. In the early days, we got bits and bots of money to do some research and to try different things, but the most significant money that we've had is in the last 3 years, and that was from the lottery, and that allowed us to go out across Greater Manchester and deliver communication courses to family carers, just to support them to connect better, to think about how they communicate, and just to help sort of keep their relationship strong with the person with dementia. So I say we've been doing that for the last 3 years. Alongside the family carers, we've also been doing workshops and some online courses for professionals as well, just to share those same techniques. I think that's all I want to say at the moment. Oh no, I want to say one more important thing. We've got a really dedicated team in the Empowered Conversations group. We've got a few of them on the screen today, and we've got a few hopefully who are watching and supporting. And I think that's all I want to say. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Lydia Morris. And I'm going to share my screen.
Great, thanks Emma. So I'm Lydia. Emma's been kindly describing the research project as my research project, but it's really a partnership between the University of Salford and 6 Degrees Social Enterprise. So I mean, there's been so many people involved in the project, but I just did want to mention some others just as a way of thanking everyone who's been involved. So obviously you've met Emma, and you'll meet Phil a bit more later, and we've also got Anthea Innes, who's based at the Institute of Dementia, University of Salford. We've had a number of people who've been really instrumental in getting Empowered Conversations going and developing it. Tracy Williamson, Natalie Yates-Bolton, of course our amazing facilitator team. No way the course would even run, let alone develop in the way it has done without the facilitators, and of course all the family care partners who have accessed the course. You know, they've also massively shaped what we do. And yes, also Yellow Jigsaw, who do promotion and marketing for us. So there's probably forgotten other people, but those are some of the key people. Thanks to everyone. So yeah, so this is a bit of an overview of the presentation. It's not all going to be me talking, you'll probably be pleased to hear, but I will give a bit of background and also tell you a bit more about conversations. What I'm really going to focus on is the exciting fact that we can now reveal the research findings from this 3-year project. So this is the first time we've put these findings out into the world, so it is rather exciting. And then after I've talked us through the findings, we're going to have a panel discussion so you can hear more from everyone within the team. And then obviously there'll be a time to answer questions and ask questions. So that's the kind of overall shape of the presentation.
Oh, sorry. I was looking at something else.
Emma's moving the slides over, so if there's occasional minor pauses, that's all it is. So in terms of background, there are some courses out there, so just sort of say a tiny bit about why we developed Empowered Conversations in terms of the overall context. So before we sort of finalised the course and developed it, we looked into what's already out there, into a number of big reviews as to what's out there for carers. When I say what's out there, it doesn't actually mean what might be available in your local area. This is more what kind of exists in the world, basically. So we looked into what was already available broadly, and then we identified there was a few limits to what's out there already. So one of the key things that doesn't feature even in communication trainings is an understanding of relationships and interaction. I mean, communication obviously is partly to do with how you speak and what you convey, but it's also to do with the relationship. You know, that's a key part of communication. So the courses that are out there, whilst, you know, there's nothing wrong with them as such, tended to focus on very simple strategies like speaking in short sentences. So they're not massively individualized, and obviously, as I say, they kind of miss the complexity of an actual interaction, which has much more give and take, really. So yeah, so in response to that, a team of us developed the Empowered Conversations course. And as Emma said, we have developed a range of different courses, but I'm going to be focusing on the family care partner course because that's what this project's been about. And I'm using the term care partner just because that's what we've had feedback as to what care partners themselves would prefer. I might occasionally say carer, but you'll know what I mean either way. So the format of the course I'm going to be sharing with you today is 4 2.5 hour sessions. We are in the process of piloting a 6 session course, which is also proving really successful. But the big lottery study, this study that I'm reporting today, focuses on the 4 session course. And it's delivered in a group Empowered Conversations, for those of you who don't already know. So traditionally we've delivered it face-to-face, and obviously in recent months we've been looking into delivering it and developing it more online. So yeah, that's a bit about the course overall, and I'm going to hand over to Emma, who's going to tell us a bit more about one of the techniques on the course.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about invitation to respond. So as Lydia said, we all know the simple strategies like not asking questions, but that's really hard when we have a conversation, because how do we start a conversation if we're not going to use a question? And if we're people who ask a lot of questions, it's quite hard to get our heads around. So invitation to respond sort of gives us a way of doing that. It works really well when we're doing it in the present. And we can start a conversation using an invitation by maybe using a comment or an observation. And unlike a question where we're putting the other person under pressure to answer, with an invitation to respond, if the person doesn't answer, they've not lost face and there's no pressure around that. So what we're trying to do is ease somebody into a conversation without them feeling under pressure. So I might say, Martin, I love the colour of your t-shirt. And that might be enough to start a conversation. And if Martin didn't choose to answer, then that's absolutely fine. And, you know, nobody's lost face, nobody feels embarrassed. If Martin did want to respond, then we might end up having a really interesting conversation about the colour of his t-shirt.
You have lost face because it's actually a jumper.
Is it? Looks like a t-shirt, Martin.
Come on, I'm an old man, come on.
Thanks, Emma and Martin. So as I say, I'm going to be focusing mainly on the findings of the project, but just to tell you a little bit about some of the things we did as part of the project. So 2 of the main aspects were that we collected questionnaire data. So we only collected data on a few questionnaires. And when I say data, I just mean information. We only used a few questionnaires, mainly just because we didn't want to kind of outface people with like having to fill in 8 questionnaires at the beginning of the sessions. So we just focused on a couple of key things. And the key things we focused on was stress and communication. We also collected stuff on satisfaction and acceptability, but I'm going to focus on stress and communication. I also conducted 28 detailed interviews with family care partners. So that, when I say detailed, I mean sort of, you know, between half an hour and over an hour. So, you know, getting a real sense of what people got out of the course, what was helpful, was there anything they thought should be changed. So we really wanted to hear from people about their experience of the course. And overall, the research is and has been to develop the course and to ensure it best meets the needs of care partners and people living with dementia. We wanted to know the course worked. We already kind of got the sense it did, but the key thing is also just to find out what worked and why, and if we needed to make any changes. So this is the findings bit, the big reveal. So just as, first I'm going to talk a little bit about the questionnaire data. So this was from just under 170 care partners. So the data, we collected data before the course, so at the first session, after the course, so at the last session, and at 4-month follow-up. And I did some what sounds like a fancy analysis, but basically analysis that looked at change across time in order to find out what happened regarding stress and what happened regarding communication over time. And the findings were really, really exciting, exactly in a way what we would have wanted to find, if you see what I mean. So what we found was that stress levels significantly reduced from before to after the course, and then the stress levels reduced again at follow-up. So that's even once people have stopped accessing the course, there's still reductions in stress. And similarly with communication, it got better. People felt more confident, they were communicating more effectively from before to after the course, and then again to follow-up. And I've got a couple of little graphs just to show you. So this one's a graph of the stress. So it basically just shows that stress has gone down over time. So this is the average stress levels within all of the 169 participants. So time point 1 before the course, time point 2 after the course, and time point 3 at follow-up. So you can see it goes down each time point. And then the same with communication, but obviously communication gets better. You kind of want communication to improve and stress to get less, so hence the lines in a different direction. But it's essentially a similar finding in the sense that communication got better from pre to post course, and then got better again at follow-up. This is to hear the voices of some of the care partners who participated in Empowered Conversations and their experience.
Life as a carer is very stressful, very demanding. Physically, it's draining.
It's hard. I'm just in the house all the time and can't get out anywhere.
It's upsetting when you see your family member not being able to manage things, remember things, and it frightens me.
It's a lot of different emotions. The overwhelming one is sadness and grief. I've lost the person that she was.
It can be quite tiring and stressful to one degree, but on another level, it's very fascinating because you learn all the time. I was throwing loads of bras away before I realised you can adjust the straps. What an absolute numpty.
You're always doubting yourself because you think, am I doing the right thing? It's difficult because you don't know who to look for help. You're on your own, basically.
My mum, I'm just doing what you do for your mum. She looked after me well when I was a kid, so it's just repaying, innit?
So that's a bit about sort of generally what it can be like to be a care partner, someone supporting someone living with dementia. And you'll hear more from people a bit later, but I thought before we do that, I'd share a bit of the interview findings. So this is like the results of 28 interviews with care partners who accessed the course. And so I did something called a framework analysis. Well, not just me, it was me and a number of others. And so we looked at themes across all of the different interviews. And one of the key themes, one of the things that came out of all the interviews, actually apart from one, was a theme around improved communication and relationships. I'll just give you a couple of moments to read through the quotes if you want to. You can see from the quotes that people talk about how their understanding of the person living with dementia that they're supporting really help them to sort of respond in a more flexible way. So one of the quotes mentioned being more patient, and obviously that makes a really big difference both to the communication and the relationship. And as well as that, people identified specific ways that their communication had improved. So one of the common ones that people mentioned was to do with body language. So quite a few people talked about either sitting and facing directly the person they were communicating with, or making sure they didn't shout from a different room. So, and that, in a way, that might sound a bit like, oh, well, that's a bit obvious, it's a bit trivial. But actually, if you've ever been in the situation, well, perhaps if someone's annoyed with you and they're not looking at you when you're talking to them, it's quite disconnecting. It's like you kind of can't quite kind of get a sense of what's going on for that person. And so, you know, it is really important, that sort of face-to-face. And then obviously we got a lot of people talking about invitation to respond, which Emma described earlier, and people were using that. A vast majority of the care partners used that. I mean, a number of people said it was a bit challenging, which, you know, it is basically, but they also identified that it was helpful, and it gave them a different way of thinking about communication, and that in itself was helpful. And also you know, they felt like they were putting less pressure on the person that they were supporting. So another very consistent finding was around improvements in wellbeing. So I've broken this down into comments that around specifically the care partner, and then specifically for the person living with dementia. We did have some interviews with both a care partner and someone living with dementia, but often it wasn't practical for various reasons. So we had to rely quite a lot on the care partner's report of, but then obviously they were also identifying improvements in well-being. So yeah, and for the care partner particularly, oh sorry, I'll give you a bit of time to read the quotes again before I waffle on. So yeah, a lot of people identified that they'd learn ways of reducing stress. It wasn't always a specific strategy, like we do teach a breathing technique on the course, but it wasn't always things like that. It was often just like new perspectives, new ways of thinking about things. And a lot of people also identified that they actually noticed improvements for the person living with dementia they were supporting. So obviously there's an example in the quote in terms of the body language and the communication and how they'd noticed improvements. And then another comment that was quite common was that so people would say, oh, my mum speaks a lot more than she used to, she seems more comfortable engaging with me. So again, there was kind of obvious effects on the person living with dementia in many cases, not in all, but in many cases. So another really key theme, and this was again really across all the interviews pretty much, was how much people appreciated being in a group. That seemed to be really important. And yeah, look, I'll give you a couple of seconds to read the quotes. So one of the things that a number of people mentioned was that they'd actually not spoken to any other care partners. I mean, you know, for some people that might be a bit of a surprise, but we were across Greater Manchester, and there's quite a lot of variation in how much support there is in each of the boroughs. So some people are literally not spoken to another care partner at all about their experiences. And even those who had found the group really valuable. And interestingly, because we offer the group kind of anyone really, anyone who's caring for someone living with dementia in a kind of family informal context. So that could be as a partner, sibling, friend. So there's quite a lot of range of different contexts that people are finding themselves in when they access the course. And actually, that definitely wasn't identified as a problem for people, and actually was something that about 10 people specifically picked up on as being a good thing. It wasn't something I probed, so it wasn't something I prompted people to say, if you see what I mean. It was just that they'd spontaneously say, oh well, I like the fact we came from different perspectives. I mean, there was enough in common, but it was really interesting to hear different experiences. So that's quite interesting, because sometimes people might suggest, oh, you have to be all the same kind of context, and that didn't seem to be the experience that people are having in this course. Yeah, and so I mentioned one of the key aspects of the research was to see if there were any improvements that could be made. And we did 28 interviews, and out of those 28 people, half of them said that more sessions could have helped. So it was a 4-session course. And people, you know, and people got a heck of a lot out of it. But so a lot of people were saying, oh, actually, you wouldn't have minded a couple more sessions. And because that was such a relatively consistent finding, I mean, half of the participants is substantial in this sort of respect, is we have developed and are currently piloting this six session course, which seems to be really well received. Of all the people I've interviewed so far and spoke to so far, you know, are finding it really, really beneficial. And also we had a number of specific suggestions, and where possible we did make changes. You know, occasionally it's not possible to make a change, but just because, you know, for example, it's just not practical, or people have different views, so they actually would be in contradiction to each other. But where we could, we did incorporate the suggestions people made. So one suggestion would be a section on problem solving common issues. So, you know, particularly issues in communication, but it could be, you know, other things. Why does my partner keep hiding things, or, you know. Martin's laughing because but it is a common, you know, there are certain things that people, you know, experience over and over again. So yes, we have now got a section on this, and we've obviously there's quite a lot you could potentially cover, but what we've done is done a sort of prompt sheet, or a, you know, a kind of like a ideas sheet on a number of different issues, and then people can choose which issues they want to focus on and to talk about in more detail in the group, but then they can have all the kind of ideas, all our suggestions as well. So so yeah, I mean, we are really keen to sort of make sure the course is shaped in regards to feedback. Obviously for participants, and also the facilitators of the course have been giving us loads of useful feedback throughout. So and this is a bit more from our 5.
It's given me reassurance that I am doing the best that I can. I'm not letting my mum down. It's given me a bit more confidence in myself. It's given me the tools to help deal with the feelings that I do have of grief.
Going on the course, you meet other people, you learn from other people. It's a massive thing. Meeting the people that run the course, who are amazing people at what they do. It's reminded me of things like this simple thing they taught us about an invitation to respond. Try and make a conversation. The simple thing like, Mum, do you want a cup of tea? For me to say, oh, I'm thirsty. And then my mum might say, oh, I think I am, I'll have a drink. That was a brilliant skill.
I'm understanding how the brain, how it's affected. I understand how it's a communication disease. I understand also that when my dad was behaving like he did, he was scared, but couldn't communicate that to anybody.
Trying to be face to face, because often I'm in the bedroom shouting to my mum in the bathroom, and then I go in and she'll say, I didn't know what you said, I can't understand, and it's because she couldn't see me.
So give me tools to talk to my mum when she is feeling agitated and upset, to try and distract her, sort of distraction techniques, and help me understand how she's talking to me and the actions that she's doing, how she could be feeling. But I've learned to be a little bit more selfish about it, that I'm not a bad person for wanting to spend a bit of time to myself.
I think it's been absolutely marvellous. I've tried to encourage people I know to do it.
It is fabulous. You know, when you just feel at ease with people.
Okay. So we're just going to stop the presentation there, and we're going to hand over to Phil. And Phil, this was your idea, I don't know, like 5 or 6, more than 6 years ago, because I'd come back off maternity leave. So maybe 6 or 7 years ago, you were talking about this, you were thinking about it, and now you've just sat through and listened to Lydia's research results. I just wonder how you're feeling and any thoughts you want to share with us.
Well, feel quite moved actually. I never expected what was just a simple idea that would have so much legs and go so far. I thought it was really touching to me to hear the voices of the carers. So the research is great, and so we're getting away from just anecdotal stories, but there's nothing quite as rich as hearing it from the horse's mouth, and there's so much depth in what each of those carers were saying about the situation and how they're trying to deal with it. I really did think it was very moving.
Thank you, Phil. And Margaret and Martin, I'm going to bring you all in now, if that's okay, but it'd be really interesting. So Margaret and Martin, you've got 2 very different perspectives potentially on the course. So Margaret, I'll go over to you first. I just wondered what your thoughts were on those findings.
I think the delight was seeing in the research evidence what you felt was true, which was the reduction in stress over the 4-week period of the course, but also ongoing, and the improvement of communication. And why I find that particularly striking is that the disease, the process of dementia, doesn't stand still, and that becomes more of a challenge, and yet the stress levels are seen to come down because the tools are there to help deal with it. And the communication, to me, it implies that communication can't just be about words, because we know that words become harder. So the fact that the communication improves indicates that there's more to communication than the words which come out of your mouth. It's about whole body language, about seeing what's going on and understanding. But Martin, you'll be able to speak more to that than me.
Yes, I mean, the first thing I have to say is the facilitators are superb, all of them, which is vitally important. I think the thing about the course, it also encourages you to carry on learning. It starts you off in many ways. Communication is one of those things, it doesn't jump instantly out when you're talking about caring for someone. And that seems rather silly, really, because obviously it's so important. And it's a huge learning curve, and I'm not sure we ever reach the top. I think courses like Empowered Conversations really start the ball rolling. Besides all the tips they give you, which are vital as a carer, I think that's it. You've got to learn all the time, because it is, as I said, it is this learning curve you go along.
Oh, go on, Margaret.
Again, I was only going to say that interesting thing about communication, when you think about it, it's common sense. And yet until you think about it, it escapes you. And over and over again, people say on the courses that it's not just for the person they're caring for with dementia that they use the tools for. They use it for communication with everybody, because it's just how humans work.
It is a very, very large subject, the whole thing to do with caring, and an essential part of it is, of course, the communication.
And I've certainly used the invitation to respond many times with the person who's sitting behind me.
Hello.
So I'm just, oh, wait a minute, we've got some Q&As. Okay, so I've got a question for you all, and it says, it's from our very favourite friend over in Yorkshire, Ping Pong Pete, and he said, forgive me, have I missed something? I'm a Yorkshireman. Did the study include participants who were involved online or only face-to-face?
Do you want me to have a go at that one?
Yeah.
So for the big lottery study, it was mainly focused around face-to-face. As a kind of broader team, we've been doing quite a bit online. For example, our fantastic Empowered Carers team are doing one-to-ones online with care partners, and also we have been adapting the Empowered Conversation online sort of, and we use it with professional carers as well. But I mean, in terms of the kind of what I've mainly been focusing on, which has been this big lottery funded study, that was sort of envisaged and really delivered as a face-to-face kind of group format. Obviously not really possible at the moment, but generally speaking, something that people seem to get a lot out of, you know, being in the same room with other care partners. So yeah, so yes, we have got some online, but it wasn't really the focus of this big lottery study.
And I suppose that makes a good sort of opportunity for me to talk about how we've been dealing with sort of COVID-19 and what's been going on. So as an Empowered team, we've been offering, and it sort of answers a bit of Pete's question as well, we've been offering more and more online support for carers, because we're very aware that carers do need to get some, carers and Elizabeth do need to sort of meet up with other people, and it's really important that we can do that. And Martin, I know that you come along to a few of those groups. I wonder if you just want to share some of that, because I think we really do need to talk about COVID-19 and how that's impacting on people.
Oh yes, of course. It's not just carers it's impacted on, but we see it from a different angle. But I think the fact that you've done so many things as an organisation, for instance, I'm involved I've just had one at lunchtime today, where a group of us have chatted with Rachel, I'll call her a facilitator program, saying it doesn't have to be about caring, it can be about anything whatsoever. Yesterday we had a marvellous session that was arranged by yourselves, which was a drawing for an hour. And it was absolutely excellent, because it took your mind off things, it relaxed you. I never thought I'd be moaning at myself for getting lengths of leaves wrong, etc. And then, of course, we've got things like this, which, of course, you're doing as well, which without the wonderful internet, I'm afraid we'd be very isolated, wouldn't we?
Yeah, and we've really noticed that actually quite a few people, especially with Empowered Carers who were quite reluctant to come online, have come online. So they've sort of embraced it because they have to. So we've certainly seen quite a lot of people who we've been doing one-to-ones with on the telephone have come over onto Zoom now, because they sort of really need that sort of connection with other carers.
Could I also mention that the singing group we have on a Friday includes the actual your loved one as well, and of course trying to stimulate loved ones who are not able to see other people or members of the family, or in Linda's case go to the Poppy Centre 4 days a week. That's vital. So the music has been something that's really been appreciated by both of us.
Yeah. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
So I should just point out that Margaret delivers the Come and Sing session on the Friday, so that will be music to her ears, literally. We've all been a bit quiet on the Q&A, everyone. So I'm just going to give you all a prompt now. So at the bottom of your screen is a little box that says Q&A. So if you want to ask any questions to Lydia around the research, to any of us around Empowered Conversations or the work that we do, then please use that function. I know there's still 43 of you, so unless you're all just drinking tea, I'm sure you've got some questions that you want to ask.
Did we answer Natalie Yates Bolton's question about were there aspects of the findings that surprised you?
Oh, I don't think so.
I didn't see it. There you go.
Shall I have a crack at that at first, and then, yeah. Was there aspect of the findings that was surprising? It did surprise me a bit, this thing about, you know, that people actually really quite like the diversity within the group. I think, like, I maybe many other people, that you kind of need quite a shared experience to get the most out of a group. But, you know, it was really interesting that was actually something people appreciated. I suppose there's enough shared experience that you know, it wasn't kind of a difficulty for people. In terms of the other findings that surprised me, I mean, not that I was totally surprised, but I was sort of, in a way, a bit like Margaret said, like the fact that stress actually carried on going down after the course finished was, you know, in some ways was quite mind-blowing. I just thought, well, gosh, you know, I've been spending kind of the last 3 years talking a lot to family carers, and obviously I have some personal experience of that, as many of us here do. And, you know, it can be, not exclusively, it can be very rewarding and as Martin says, an amazing learning experience, but it can be pretty stressful. And sort of the fact that stress carried on going down after people had finished the course, you know, that blew me away a bit, I must say.
Can I just come in there, Lydia? I think it's because you're given the tools by the course. And as I said before, that starts you on this road of learning all the time. And I do have to say, I don't want to talk about lockdown too much, but I'm not sure how I would have managed as well if I hadn't started that course a year ago. And the pre-course, we mustn't forget the pre-course that I had at Age UK with Emma. And even despite that, I still went on the course with Paul and Jennifer. I really genuinely believe the things I learned then have continued to learn, have enabled me to be effectively isolating with Linda for 5 weeks. So that's a very good thing to bring into it.
Thanks, Martin. Thank you.
Yeah.
Phil, I think you wanted to add something then, and we've got a few more questions.
There's something I think that's really important about the way the course is delivered and the way the course is structured, and it is that it's not a type of course where people are just talked at. It's a type of course where people kind of, we're not put under too much pressure, but just can do simple exercises that just help them to think about what they're doing. It was in a way that's not overwhelming, but we can potentially learn from each other. And I think that's effective because when we learn in that kind of way, it can help us open up to experience and see things and take things on board that we can't do when we're just being taught at, because the knowledge may stay in our head, but the practice may not go along with it.
Just the questions are starting to roll in now, everyone.
Oh yeah, there's loads suddenly.
So Tracy, our friend Tracy Williamson, just sort of made a question about carer stress. Would you not have expected carer stress to go up after the course as life continues to bring new challenges? And I think we would expect that, and maybe you know, as life goes on a bit further, maybe we would have seen that, but certainly within the study period we didn't see that. Is that what we're saying, Lydia?
Yeah, I mean, but as Martin said, I suppose there is something about once people have learned tools, if they can continue to apply them, you know, there is the potential for that to carry on for some time. Yeah, I mean, obviously we can't really know that because our follow-up sort of time frame wasn't massive, but you know, it's definitely, it seems possible, and you know, people were still using stuff they learned. Sorry, I think Martin wants to...
Yeah, sorry, it's just two linked elements here. The thing to remember is you make friends on these courses. Each of the courses I've been on, you make friends, and it's a new body of people that you would not have met unless you'd been caring. That's the thing. So there's one example. And also with the parent conversation, they encouraged us to set up a WhatsApp group. Which we do, so which gives you an avenue to you know, chat to people all in the same situation. You don't necessarily have to talk about caring, do you? But that's something we sometimes forget, that all those people I went on the course with are my friends now.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And that was important, Martin. So thank you for sharing that. So we've got a few people who are asking sort of similar questions. So Anna has asked, the research findings are very interesting and very compelling. Obviously at the moment life has changed because of COVID-19, but when everything gets back to normal, what's next in the action plan? John Keady's also said these are very encouraging findings. What plans do you have to continue the research and the empowered conversations work in the future? So two sort of similar questions, sort of the what's next for us, I guess.
Yeah.
Shall I pick up the what's next for us? The very immediate what's next for us is that we have some funding from Salford CCG to provide online support in Salford for family carers and people with dementia to sort of support them, to give them some escapes in the week. So Martin talked about the art class yesterday that we piloted. It was a one-off, but we're hoping to get that happening now because it just really provided a bit of tranquil space for people and a pure escape. I was on that class, and every time I came and had a look, everyone was absolutely just zenned out. They were drawing. Lovely experience. What's happening now is that empowered conversations, so we're using our facilitators, you're using myself to run those support groups across the week for family carers and people with dementia. And obviously it's a good time to say that we've got another 6 of these seminars that we're putting on as well, and that's not just for family carers, it's also for professionals, for academics. It just gives us a space where we can sort of get together, continue our learning, challenge one another and challenge our thinking. Did you want to say something around the research?
Yeah, I could say a bit more about, so we've got a couple of funding bids for carrying on basically doing more empowered conversations courses and looking in more detail at what so what we did in this project was we looked at change over time in people accessing the course, but what would be really helpful to know is whether things would have changed for people if they hadn't accessed the course, because until you know that, you don't actually know if it was the course that changed things for people or something else. You never know, people's lives are complex, you don't actually know what causes change fully. So one of the fundings is for what's called a randomized controlled trial. So that does exactly that. It looks at the Empowered Conversations course compared to people who aren't getting the Empowered Conversations course, at least immediately. Everyone's going to get it, but immediately there'll be a difference. And we're also looking at a kind of combined Empowered Conversations, Empowered Carers approach. So Empowered Conversations is our group-based course, and then Empowered Carers is the one-to-ones. And they're both obviously really amazing and have their own really distinct strengths, and together they sort of seem to be a very formidable sort of network of support, really, because that's what we hope to create, more of a network of support for people, so that people can get what they need at different times. So those are the 2 main funding bids we've got in at the moment, or sort of hopefully final stages of those.
Brilliant, thank you. Apparently there was a dog in the park called Peggy, so that's very interesting.
Yeah.
But that wasn't a question for the panel. This is one from Hazel. So Hazel Blair's, a great friend of ours, has asked, she said, great findings. How have you been able to assess the wellbeing impact and how this saves money to the NHS and care services? This could help expand the service. So it sort of builds on what you're saying.
Yeah, we haven't. I mean, we've kind of obviously got findings around well-being, but we didn't build in kind of more of a cost-effectiveness analysis, or kind of looking at that kind of cost impact, you could say. in the future studies we are looking at that, but for this study it was more around really just getting a sense of what people were finding useful, getting some initial findings, making sure it did work like we thought it did, and sort of getting, you know, like I say, getting feedback from care partners, people living with dementia, the facilitator team, to just really make sure we had it like the best it could be, that the kind of it was going to meet people's needs as best we could make it.
Phil, did you want to say anything else on that comment from Hazel?
I think that Hazel's absolutely right, and in what she's saying, but it's a real challenge to get commissioners and people who pay for services to move support for carers and people with dementia upstream to help them like earlier on in the journey to accrue the benefits over time. It's hard not to provide a service when things break down and the people may kind of experience crisis, whereas it's far more beneficial and preferable trying to avoid getting into that situation in the first place, and enabling people to have a really kind of much better quality of life. Yeah.
Can I just add to that, Phil? I think also one of the issues is nothing really happens, no disrespect to any organisation or body at all, until the word dementia is officially on the patient's record or whatever. I think at that point, I mean, certainly in the Salford Council area, you have the social service get involved, Age UK, of course, and then, of course, you're linked onto 6 Degrees, etc., etc. The Humphrey Booth Centre and the Poppy Day. And I think that is one of the problems. How you overcome it, of course, is a different matter, whether you bring it earlier along when it's suspected that it could be dementia as opposed to depression or delirium or whatever. I think that would be an avenue to look at.
Yeah, that's a good point. We did have a few people on the course who it was sort of like they hadn't quite got a diagnosis, but they thought it was probable. I think that's one of the real advantages of offering, because we don't have, like, some courses have quite strict what they called exclusion criteria, so people that can't access the course, where we haven't gone down that route. We've kind of tried to make it as accessible as possible, so not be kind of like excluding people. So it means that, but you're right, I think, you know, that's something that needs kind of recognising, really, because it's not like you only start struggling once the diagnosis happens. It's like, you know, suddenly line in the sand. Before it was totally easy, diagnosis really total chaos now. It doesn't obviously work like that. So yeah, it's a good point.
Thank you for those ones. So I keep going, oh, another friend of ours, Les Taylor from Salford CVS, who is a friend of ours. This is for you, Martin. So Martin mentioned the course starts you on the road to learning, and that's good. What happens after the course by way of support, but also additional skills?
I think firstly, as I said before, that the course gives you a group of friends, and the facilitators have kept in touch. But equally, I mean, look at this. So I'm involved in all this now. I went on the course a year ago. So I think 6 Degrees especially, I've done an awful lot of things. I have a monthly one-to-one, for instance. And I think you can't just do a course and then shut the door on it. And you've not done that. That was something that facilities training learned years ago. You have to have that follow-up. Otherwise, really, what's the point of the course?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. And yeah, we were really keen that as a group people would stay together. So I know Martin mentioned the WhatsApp group that they've started. So we know that in other areas they'd meet up in Morrison's for a cup of tea or whatever. They'll chat on the WhatsApp.
Yes, if it wasn't for these courses or the work you do, we wouldn't have this group of friends. And without any disrespect to anyone whatsoever, when you are a carer, you have that link. It doesn't matter if you spend all lunchtime eating, drinking, talking about everything under the sun, bar caring. You've still got that underlying link, which is important. And it's courses like you provide and all the work and all the communication that you bring about that leads us to have this group, which is vitally important to support us.
Thanks, Martin. Gordon's asked a couple of questions. I'm going to pick on one of them. Was the programme co-produced using the voices and direct experiences of people living with dementia?
Shall I talk about that? Yeah, it was
and I could say something as well.
Yeah. So it was the work was done in parallel with a few other research studies. So it's we had some clinical psychology students from Manchester University who expressly studied what people felt was good about communication. Right, they did that for looked at the experience of the person with dementia and from the experience of the carer. So it was a big thing that the carers said. There's a paper published outlining the findings of the study. It says it's great when people, they don't just tell you to shut up and listen to what you have to say. Yeah, so that was a real kind of felt experience, that there was an openness there and that's really valued, helping somebody with dementia to feel and stay connected and valued and understood.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions here that are around a similar sort of theme, and I know we touched on it a little bit in the presentation, Lydia, but it'd be good to talk a little bit more.
Yeah, I can say a bit more about that. Do you want to say the questions?
Yeah, so we've got how have carers informed the course design and development, and similar sort of one, did you find that there was an ideal group size, and what was the general format of each session, balancing input and sharing opportunities? I think, Margaret, you could probably come in on that second point. So Lydia, if you pick up the first one about how carers, I know you mentioned it a bit, but how carers inform course design, because I think that's really comes through in the sixth session that we developed out of this research.
So we sort of, I suppose, it's been quite an iterative process, you could say, so quite a back and forth, really, the development of this course. I mean, it actually, strictly speaking, started as a kind of 2 to 3 session, and then we expanded it to a 4 session, but that was quite early on in the current project. And yeah, and it was very much kind of based on the feedback of people accessing the course. I mean, we did also, because we're partnered with the University of Salford, we did also, they've got an associates group which is made up of care partners and people living with dementia. So we did do a number of consultations with that group as well. I suppose it would be probably fair to say that overall we did get more consultation from care partners than we did people living with dementia. We do have people living with dementia directly impacting on our in our steering group, and also in the sort of shaping of the course. But because it's care partners who are accessing the course, they were the focus of the sort of co-production. I mean, I'm not sure if I'd have to look into it to see if we strictly followed a co-production model, but in terms of kind of the overall ethos and the amount of feedback. So, for example, we included sessions from someone from like the Alzheimer's Society or Age UK, and we found that as there was a section within a session, we found those weren't that popular because people felt there was too much information and they already knew some of it. So then we changed it, and then we've sort of been changing the course throughout, really. We get feedback forms every single session. So every single session we get feedback forms from care partners. And then also, obviously, I spent a lot of time talking to, as well, anyone who would talk to me who'd accessed the course around, you know, how they found it. Obviously, I did these detailed interviews, but even when I was done a briefer questionnaires, which we did it for 4-month follow-up, I obviously usually had a chat with people if they wanted to tell me about how they found the course. I was very happy to hear it, and you know, I did incorporate that as well, and the same with other members of the team. And I suppose the other one thing to mention, so I don't forget, most of our facilitators, if not perhaps all of our facilitators, are people who either are currently caring for someone living with dementia or have recently been caring for someone living with dementia, and quite a few of them actually came to be facilitators through actually doing the course itself. So obviously then again you have another kind of layer in the way that the course has been shaped, because they've also really massively shaped the course. And you know, and I think I gave this specific example of moving to 4 to 6, and I suppose you could say that was a more direct result of this particular project. But there's been so many changes to the course on the basis of feedback in, you know, and discussion.
That's great, Lydia. Sorry, I'm being a strict chair because we've only got
it's good.
less. We've got a few more questions. I'm just conscious that we've not heard Margaret that much today. So Margaret, this is pure. You can absolutely love this question. Did you find there was an ideal group size? And what was the general format of each session, balancing input and sharing opportunities?
You're going to think that I'm cheating on this one because the ideal group size is whatever turns up on the day. You have this wonderful idea that you think you've got 8 coming, and then you find that actually it's not that 8. It's a different selection from that 8. Some couldn't make it that day. Some can come the next week. And I think we had one course which was so oversubscribed that we had 16 instead of the 8. And that had a couple of people who had dementia as well in the group. So every time you start a group, you don't quite know how it's going to work. But what you do know is that every group is going to be completely different, not just because of the number in the group, but because of who's there. The thing about the group is it's got we have a manual or a workbook which we shape our course to. But within that shape, we work with what people in the group need to know, need to talk about. There was one group particularly recently who were very concerned about the guilt they had that they didn't have enough time to spend with the people they were caring for, and that directed how we were going to use our time, how we were going to shape the session, obviously covering core elements like invitation to respond, but listening to what people wanted to talk about so that they could express and discuss with each other, and to some extent come to an idea of how to approach things because of what each other had said, not because of what the people leading the group, leading inverted commas, said, but because of how the information came from within the group to form and fashion the shape of that session.
Thanks, Margaret. So we've got a couple more. We've got a comment and a question, and then I think we'll finish with that. I have just opened the poll in, everyone. 2 very simple questions just to get some thoughts around this. There are still 43 people on here, so I'm guessing you're enjoying it so much, or maybe just watching whenever Elizabeth comes on the screen. This is from John, who was absolutely. I only met him and his family once, but he brought his wife was on the course, his 2 sons were on the course, and it was just so lovely to see them. And he said the Empowered Conversations course really helped my family by talking to other carers about their experience, and also sometimes the different techniques in dealing with the disease before medical interventions. And he's just asked, have you been able to expand your courses reach into other areas? So Phil, I think I'm going to go over to you for that one, and that's our last question.
I think we've expanded geographically outside of Greater Manchester. So we've done some courses in Yorkshire, and we've done some courses in Wales. Being able to deliver the course online really helps that, because it means that it's a lot more practical to deliver courses for groups that are further away. And I suppose the other focus is that we've done some work with care homes where it may be difficult to release like a large number of staff in one go, but we can arrange for 1 or 2 carers from each care home to attend each course, which takes the burden off the care home in terms of releasing staff. And so that's made a real difference in opening up places for people to attend the training.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Phil. Right, okay, I have I'm going to draw us to an end, so we're absolutely perfect on time. So I just want to say thank you for everyone for attending.
Yes,
that has been brilliant. Thank you for the panel for giving us your time, especially Martin. We've got another 6 seminars happening over the next 6 weeks. So the first one is on Monday the 18th. Yes. Macaroni Monday. You might call it something else in your house, but we call it Macaroni Monday, and it's with Dr. Esther Ramsey-Jones, who is going to be exploring how the use of therapeutic play can help to build connections and relationships.
Ooh.
Really love to carry on the conversation with everyone, so what I'm going to do is just show my screen. I'm going to share this screen now, and it's got all of our contact details on there. I'm just going to have a sweet now. So from here, so that's our contact details. We would love to carry on having a conversation with people. So please email me, tell us on Twitter how you found the seminar today. It'd be lovely to hear. Check on the website also. And yeah, just keep chatting with us, please. So that is the end. We are at 3 o'clock. I'm going to call the seminar to an end. Thank you, everyone. It's been amazing. Okay.